We all know Eric Carle from his books like The Very Hungry Caterpillar, Brown Bear, What Do You See? And Pancakes, Pancakes. While looking for a speech, a person worthy for a speech like this, I didn't really know who to do, and I didn't expect to find somebody so interesting. Through both his writing and illustrating, he's reached out to numerous children and adults alike, and he's founded a museum. Carle has a very strong idea behind his work. He is quoted as saying, "I'm fascinated by the period in a child's life when he or she goes, for the first time, leaves home and goes to school. I should like my books to bridge that great divide." We're going to talk about Carle. I'm going to tell you about his childhood, how he came to make children's book, and a little bit about his life now. Carle was born in 1929 in Syracuse, New York, in the United States of America. His mother and father were immigrants from Germany. When he was 6, they returned to Germany, and that is where he received most of his education and where he learned to speak German. Meet the Authors, Volume 1, briefly informs readers of Eric Carle and his father's close relationship. Carle states that his love of animals, insects, and all things in nature stems from his relationship with his father. In Flora and Tiger, 19 very short stories from my life, Carle talks about how his father would take him on long walks in Germany where they would turn over rocks and poke at ant hills, and they would just sit around and observe nature. He also attributes his art skills and his storytelling abilities to his father. His father was always doodling and scribbling, and this inspired him to make his own art. He is constantly telling Carle stories. When Eric Carle was 10 years old, World War II broke out in Germany, and on the first day of the war, his father was drafted. He wouldn't see his father again until he turned 18. Even as a young child in Germany, Carle knew that he wanted to be an artist. His Opa, which is German for grandfather, wanted him to be an engineer. He tried to make him into a pianist, and finally he decided that he should be a doctor. Carle, at this suggestion, locked himself in his grandfather's bedroom and peeled all the wallpaper off his walls. After his childhood education in Germany, Carle continued on, and he went to an art school and got his degree there. He transferred back to New York with only his portfolio. And then in the 50s, he worked in advertising, and he was an international art director. After a friend of his, Bill Martin, saw his work, he had made a lobster for an advertisement. He asked him to illustrate a book he had written called Brown Bear, What Do You See? The Very Hungry Caterpillar was Carle's third book and probably his most popular. He was initially going to use a bookworm, and his editor didn't like that, so they chose caterpillar instead, so we have a very hungry caterpillar. His illustrations are called a collage. They use tissue paper, and he texturizes and paints and glues them on white paper, then takes a photograph, and that's how he gets those big vibrant pictures. He has written and illustrated many books. He's co-authored with other people. He has books like The Very Busy Spider and The Very Quiet Cricket. He hopes to help and entertain children. Carle's own time in school in Germany was very difficult for him, and he is quoted from Emma Brock saying that if his childhood was more comfortable, he'd probably just be pumping gas. He wouldn't be inspired. Carle's also started a museum. It's called the Eric Carle Museum of Picture Book Art. It's in Amherst, Massachusetts, and it's founded in 2002. And there's no generational gap with Carle's work. It was relevant when he wrote it, and he was relevant now. It's passed through the generations, and we all still love it. We've talked about Eric Carle, and you've learned that he was raised in Germany, and he worked in advertisement, and now he writes children's books. I am going to continue to enjoy his work. I'm going to teach my children about him, and I hope that y'all do the same thing. Thank you very much for being good.